I really don't think that when a few of Japan's larger movie studios sat down and said, okay, let's change the way we do things, that they envisioned a haunting and morally scarred Mr. Okayama, let alone that chilling end sequence with the. Yeah. But that's just the beauty of it all. Though the Japanese New Wave was, in essence, a prompt, they still had no idea what would come out of it. See, the thing is, Japan was realizing it had a couple of problems within its film industry. One glaring problem was that audiences were losing interest in the new studio releases. Companies like Toho took a look at this issue and told their filmmakers to make stuff that was ultra-modern and very experimental. And yes, that sort of means that the Japanese New Wave was a corporate-driven and systematically made movement. However, it came with a number of directors who were very keen on working in an experimental and philosophical format. Directors like Toshio Matsumoto, Nagisa Oshima, and, Hiroshi Teshigahara. Directors like these who drove the movement pumped lots of existentialism and mild surrealism into social commentary to tackle issues such as the rise of a troubled generation of youths, delinquent culture, and so on.
お分かりですか? これがなんだか.
Hiroshi Teshigahara released his existential nightmare, The Face of Another, in 1966. This came out 2 years after his critically acclaimed Woman in the Dunes and follows Mr. Okayama, a man whose face had been severely scarred in an industrial accident, and how in following the, albeit experimental suggestions of his psychiatrist, he wears a realistic-looking mask designed to give him the appearance of someone else. In his transformation, the destruction of his own individuality exposes this darkness in him. And he does some pretty weird and terrible things in his second anonymous identity, including trying to get with his wife as this other person, and even trying to assault a random woman on the street. Also, there's this little side story that parallels the main one that shows this girl who also has a scarred face, and her brother who she lives with. Unlike Mr. Okayama, she is comfortable enough to go out into the real world without a covering, yet still has this need to be desired by others. She tries to go about her normal life, covering up the injury as if it isn't there. And the characters in this storyline, oddly enough, are nameless and don't interact with the protagonist, Mr. Okayama, at all. By the end of the film, a couple of weird and surreal events happen. The first is that the girl with the scar on her face drowns herself in the sea, unable to deal with the stress and anxiety presented by her injury. Or maybe it's because that she couldn't get a mask like Mr. Okayama did. I don't know. Also, a bit of light comes and stabs the girl's brother and turns him into like this flayed bowl hung by a metal hook. Yeah. The next bit is even weirder and goes back to an idea that the doctor had earlier, where he would give everyone masks and everyone would be anonymous. He had this revelation while they were sitting down celebrating the completion of the first mask. And what happens is this surreal visualization of his ideas coming back to bite him as this crowd of faceless citizens just sort of floods them as they come out of the police building. And in this moment, Okayama kills him. As a result, he becomes free to live in his new, darker world where he can be anybody. In terms of its ideas, I believe that Teshigahara's film almost promotes the idea that our own identity and individualism is what keeps us in line.
誰でもないんだ俺は。捕まえられるもんなら捕まえてみろ。誰でもないんだからな俺は。
That identity itself is some kind of prison which is designed to make us self-conscious of our actions. And it's that consciousness that separates us from any dark desires we hold within us. In an era of the internet where social anonymity is very prominent and growing, this idea becomes all the more frightening. Yet, the film also states that it is this very same sense of identity that allows us to survive in the modern world, and talks about how we rely on acceptance and validations to actually function, and how these things are vital to the human psyche.
無理をするなよ。
Again, it goes without saying that this is all the more relevant today. How should we view our own identity? How should we reciprocate these views with others? If a man can be anyone, what kinds of moral grounds would he walk away from? And it is that kind of existential thinking that cements The Face of Another as a core film in the crazy, ultra-modern, and philosophical Japanese New Wave movement. Thank you.